We were joking last week when we talked about the YouTube channel where I said, well, there's a lettuce competing at the moment. And I am not joking here. Last week I spoke about the lack of leadership when it comes to the person of Liz Truss. And there was a YouTube video online where someone asked, who is going to last longer? Is it the lettuce or is it Liz Truss? And well, what should I say? The lettuce won. At least we can say Brits have humor. And as you can hear by my charming accent, I am German, and Germans do not have any humor. So, of course, we now talk about change in leadership because that is exactly what just happened in the United Kingdom. Another change. When you look at the amount of home secretaries, prime ministers, a person just tweeted, put on Twitter that his son now lived through 4 home secretaries and 2 prime ministers, and his son is 4-month-old. It is a sad situation indeed. However, we have to deal with change in leadership, and change in leadership is becoming more and more frequent, especially in free enterprise these days. And that's why we have to talk about how to deal with change in leadership. When we talk about change in leadership, of course, what you want to have out there, you want to have continuity. At least you want to have that people perceive continuity. The best case, of course, is when you have continuity as a matter of fact in your organization. However, the minimum goal you have is that people perceive that there's continuity, even when the continuity isn't as good internally as it is perceived externally or by your peers, friends, and employees. The main question is how to do that, because especially when it comes to conflict, and we know that this happens, quite frequently in the last years, especially when you have M&A situation, merger acquisitions, or you have a change of strategy, or you have conflicts amongst the highest level of leaders. These dissonances, these difficulties, these conflicts can easily lead to the situation that people say, sorry, thank you very much, but I am going to move on somewhere else. And as soon as you have these conflicts, normally the handover between leaders is not great. It's not that they have these massive conflicts and then sit down for 2 or 3 days and do a handover and say, oh, look at this, look at that, you have to take care of this. Normally someone walks out. Then you settle somewhere to keep it calm, and then you hand over to someone else, either internally or externally. Either you have someone interim or you have someone who's going to take over for a longer period of time when you hire a new person, maybe internally or externally. However, the problem is when someone shows up, what do you have to do first? How to deal with a new leader in place, especially when it came out of the blue and you were surprised by it. Because employees know leadership is crucially important. Lack of leadership always creates a vacuum for others to step up, and maybe someone you do not want to have in power. Just look at the situation in the UK that they have right now. Let's see who's going to be next. My candidate, at least the candidate I assume is going to win, is Rishi Sunak, the one who, in my opinion, should have won in the first place. But let's be clear here, the whole mess the UK ended up in, especially with the free fall of the British pound, was because people voted for Liz Truss, who said, I'm going to lower taxes anyway, even when I do not have a plan how to refinance that. While Rishi Sunak, as an intelligent man and a successful investment banker, said, I can only lower taxes when I have a refinancing for it. And here you see how far populism reaches. People often vote for the simple and easy solution without thinking of the consequences. Well, hashtag Brexit, isn't it? So now we have to look at how to do it better. So step number 1 always means people have to know what is the situation right now. And there are 3 main aspects, 3 main pitfalls you should not fall for. Number 1, don't be obsessed with change. Leaders often show up and then they think, oh, I'm new here, so people now have to see that I'm here, so I'm going to change something. And often, and that is the second pitfall, this comes with a typical phrase that people say, I have to show what I stand up for. I have to set the mark to make people feel on the back of their feet. Or people always say something that they think people don't see you unless you don't change something. So obsessed with change, obsessed with look, I'm here, or even look at me when you have leaders who are a bit narcissist, which could be part of the dark side of leadership here. And the third aspect is that people sometimes are obsessed with bringing their own, well, let's say, team in. And I don't mean team in a positive way here. We have to distinguish 2 aspects right now. When a new leader turns up, of course, these leaders have contacts. And I say contacts deliberately. I do not say network. There's a massive difference between either having a network or having a bunch of insider deals in your pocket, which you want to bring into the new organization you're working for. When someone shows up and they bring their own people, always be aware this has to undergo scrutiny. And I mean a due diligence as tough and straightforward as it can be. It is always okay when someone says, I have a network of experts and these people have long-standing experience, expertise, knowledge, wisdom, real-world practice experience. That's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. However, we often see that this is not the case. Often we see that people show up somewhere and then they have let's say, a group of friends, a group of acquaintances, people they went to university, business school with, people who for many reasons are close to them, but the reason is not their expertise, their skill set, or their experience. It is simply we know each other and we help each other out. And the helping each other out normally means giving you a job on a higher position in the hierarchical pyramid or on a higher paid salary, preferably both. Employees very quickly realize when this happens. And as soon as this happens, people will lose any kind of respect for you immediately, especially when you are the new leader. People will stop following you immediately. People will, of course, not say that openly. People will just passively act either not in your favor or openly against you. So the main three pitfalls: number one, don't be obsessed with change. Number two, don't be obsessed with here I am or the look at me syndrome. And pitfall number three, don't be obsessed with bringing in your own people. There's nothing wrong with the network, but be sure that, especially when I talk to people who are now in organizational development, when you have new leaders and they suggest someone, really do your due diligence and look at other candidates internally and externally, because just because someone likes them or just because a leader brings in someone else doesn't mean that they're necessarily great. And of course, check for your CV, do interviews, same right for absolutely anyone. Also, what you have to communicate, you have to give people a reason why is there a change. And that often doesn't happen at all. What happens, and by the way, this communication has to happen unambiguously to absolutely anyone. Anyone has to know why did the change happen. What I see happening is suddenly there's a new video somewhere in front of a green screen with a CEO smiling at you or a senior leader talking to you, or even worse, only an email saying, this is the new person in town and let's take it from here. You need to give people a reason why there is a change. And this is very simple why you have to do that. If you do not give them a reason, what happens is that people will find their own reason. It's called the overthinking effect. The overthinking effect means you give people a piece of information, but the piece of information is incomplete. So you say there is a change. However, people think, well, the message should be there is a change because, and we chose that person due to, but that's all missing. So people will find out their own reason. And these reasons can be based in facts or they can be based in emotions. When we look into science, 95% of all overthinking syndromes and overthinking effects end negatively. 5%, of course, will say always an opportunity, yada, yada, yada. But these people sometimes practice toxic positivity. I'll just give you an example. You're sitting in your office Friday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. And then you receive WhatsApp, email, WebEx chat message, Teams chat, whatever it is you use for communication. And it only says, hey, here's your boss. Let's talk on Monday at 8 a.m. in my office. But first, have a nice weekend. So there you are. That is the overthinking effect. And you will now, with a 95% probability, with a 95% likelihood, you will say, that's not great. With a 5% likelihood, you will say, oh, I think it's a promotion, a salary raise. And you will be even more disappointed when you practice toxic positivity. Some of them are mildly positive or try to stay neutral. But toxic positivity means you expect something and you are even more disappointed, even more demotivated when this does not happen and something else happens. So give them a reason why there's a change. Communicate the reason to absolutely anyone. And then you have to give people a goal-setting moment. What are the short-term, mid-term, long-term goals? Short-term goals, what is going to happen very soon, basically in the reach of your hand right now. Mid-term goals, what is going to happen in the very near future, probably until the end of this year, beginning of next year. Long-term goals, anything happening after that, always give them a reason. And always apply the message and address it to every single layer of the hierarchical pyramid, to absolutely anyone. Strategical level, for board, for example, or a supervisory board for the board in Germany, where we have the dualistic system where a supervisory board controls the board of directors, or when you have the monistic system, as in the UK, for example, where the board does not have any control measures. And then you still have senior leaders in your team where you have to address them. Technical level is, for example, team lead, department leaders, and operational level people who are in the daily business doing the jobs that need to be done to get the business up and running every single day of the year. However, if you now decide not to address absolutely anyone and you stay with the neutral, here's the new CEO video, or here is the email of the new person in town without telling you anything, then you have the next problem. And your challenge will be, your problem will be, your situation will be, your issue will be called opinion leadership. Opinion leadership happens absolutely anywhere, and I'm still surprised that people deny its existence. Opinion leadership means, and now just look into your organization. Opinion leadership means someone who is not formally a leader is a person to who everyone listens. Everyone listens to their command. Chain of command bypasses others who are officially leaders. People just look at this person and say, do we do this, yes or no? And every department has opinion leaders. Opinion leadership normally happens because people are very good at what they are doing. They are sometimes very nice, very likable. They are very convincing. In worst case, they are populist. And they may or may not be working in your favor or openly against you, but maybe they are in your favor depending on how you behave. So your job is, with your goal-setting moments of short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, you have to address opinion leadership to get them on your side, because they can be great multiplicators. They can multiply your message towards the employees that you have. Unfortunately, what I often hear is that people say, well, I don't have time to appear somewhere and then do 20, 30, 40, 50 personal talks and talk to every person for half an hour or even an hour. That's a whole working week or even more. Well, if you say you have no time for that, meaning you don't want to invest a working week when you want to work probably for years, at least you pretend that you say, at least you say or pretend that you want to, that's a really bad decision, because when you don't want to invest the time, people will, and we have the overthinking effect, followed by a non-addressed audience, followed by people who talk to their opinion leaders. And when the opinion leaders say, not you, here's the message. No leader survives against opinion leadership. We have recent examples of that within the Conservative Party of the UK. Boris Johnson wanted to stay in office until every single secretary and minister stepped down. So he left because opinion leadership was against him. And even his Oxford network did not help him. Next up was Liz Truss, who says, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. 7 days later, Lettuce won, Liz Truss gone, because opinion leadership turned against her. You will not survive as a leader. You will not convince anyone as a leader. You will not get anywhere in an organization as a leader when you have a go at opinion leadership, or when you have opinion leadership against you. And that means you have to get it on your side, especially when you are new as a leader. And of course, I published about this. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, expert.nb-networks.com, just put your email address in there. Free access to everything I published every Wednesday morning. You receive an email. It's 100% content at free guarantee. And every Wednesday, you then can access everything I published on topics of sustainable leadership. Every week, I receive emails from people who say, I found material, but there's a paywall or something where I have to pay some pay function, PayPal, whatever. Yes, then you just Googled. The only way to access everything for free is putting your email address to expert.nb-networks.com. And of course, when you now say, hey, I have a very specific question, can I talk to you? Of course, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we can have a chat about any question you might have. Doesn't cost you a penny. And when you now say something very specific, I like to talk about training or speaking, coaching, consulting. We need a mentor. We have a mentoring situation. We need someone in project interim management, or, hey, we have an event. Can you either host it or speak there? Of course I can. However, it also means that if you don't have that, you just want to go through a couple of questions, that's perfectly fine as well. And as I said, it doesn't cost you a penny. Just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. The most important thing, however, is that you now apply what you learned in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the necessary and the change you want to see in your organization. And there's one more aspect I have to talk about, and I have to say thank you yet again. Last week we talked about Liz Truss, and that topic seemed to have rang a bell with many people. The leadership podcast last week was ranked in top rankings, meaning somewhere in between top 10 and 250 in the very challenging, very competitive business and management categories in every country. It was ranked in the top rankings in nine times in 8 different countries. 10 times even, 10 times in 8 different countries. That never happened before. It's a new record. So I have to say, thank you very much for spending the time with me here every week again. It is beyond anything I could have ever imagined, because it is just me talking into a notebook, a laptop, and saying, yeah, well, here we are. No advertising. There's no budget for anything. I just upload that. And I'm very happy that content still is very much appreciated, because especially the English version did very well last week. And very important now, when, of course, I was sitting there and you say, hey, what can I do to apply things in my organization properly? Because some people wanted to adapt changes, but the way they chose was not the most sustainable one. Just drop me an email and we take it from there. Especially, and I really appreciate when junior leaders listen to this podcast. I had some very senior people talking to me, but I also had a couple of very junior people who just walk into the office and say, hey, that's what we need to do. This is, of course, not how an organization works, but I can help you on the way. Just drop me an email and we take it from there. I now wish you all the best implementing what you heard in your organization. Thank you very much for keeping this podcast growing and being as successful as it is today. We now have an international listenership, which I could have never imagined when I started out a bit less than 3 years ago. And I wish you all the best implementing the steps you heard in your organization. I'm always happy to help you doing so. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.